Unbeknownst to him, and he didn't intend this initially, his book became a useful device, a useful tool in prisons. So think about it, prisoners who are trying to be redeemed, who are trying to, enter society again. A book about change and how to change yourself. I get chills talking about it because he said, and you can hear him talk about this, he's like, I never thought about that, but it happened. And now his book is now used as a part of like a curriculum for prisoners in the United States. Had he never written that book, he would never have been able to help those people.
The Tom Screen podcast is owned and made possible by Ethical Marketing Service. If your business is struggling with Google or Facebook ads, maybe you're frustrated figuring it out or there's a performance issue, Ethical Marketing Service has worked on hundreds of accounts and we can help in this area. We offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, and for every direct account we look after, we sponsor a child in a developing nation with food, water and education. If you would like to find out if we can help, it's a free, no salesy consultation call, and the link is in the description. Enjoy the episode. Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the episode today, we have Mike Capuzzi. Mike, welcome.
Thomas, thank you very much. I appreciate this.
It is my pleasure. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I'm a seasoned marketing veteran. I've been running my own marketing consulting company since 1998. Before that, I was in a software company that was very small, got very big. And before that, I was in an engineering company, because that's what my college degree is in engineering. But for the last 20 some odd years, Thomas, I've been helping initially large companies, but over the last 15 years or so, smaller, more local, small and medium-sized businesses with marketing. And specifically what we do now is we help business owners, entrepreneurs, and corporate leaders, CEOs, et cetera, really distinguish themselves in their business by publishing a nonfiction business book. And we have a very unique format, which I'm sure we'll talk about today. It's not just your traditional book, but it makes it a lot easier to read, a lot easier to write. And that's what we do today. So we're helping a lot of people become, authors.
Thank you for the introduction. There's a lot to ask you about there. So of all the things that I could ask you about, what would you say you enjoy speaking about, or perhaps is your passion?
My passion, Thomas, is really helping business owners. So again, business owners, corporate leaders, anyone that's associated with business, which you and I both know in this day and age, you have to be distinguished, you have to be different, you have to stand out in some way. Because if you don't, you sort of blend in with everybody else. So it's whether you're a local dentist or the CEO of a billion-dollar company, it's all about, how are we different? How do we serve our clients, customers, whatever, uniquely? And what a passion of mine, Thomas, is really helping business owners uncover those unique advantages and then describe them and articulate them in short, helpful books. So, there's a ton of marketing media out there, everything from business cards to elaborate video production. In my belief, books, printed books, digital books to a secondary degree are a very valuable asset, not only for consumers, because they're looking for information, but also for the person creating them, because obviously not a lot of people, even this day and age, still aren't making the effort to write a book. So right away, it puts that person in a different category.
It is, what I was going to say was, it seems like that's becoming more, should we say, there's more demand for your types of services because more and more people are becoming authors. Would you say that that's true?
I think, over the last decade or so, Thomas, technology has lowered the barrier to get into, writing a book. No longer do you need an agent. No longer do you need to go through a traditional publishing house. I mean, obviously they exist for certain types of folks who want a certain type of goal. But, if you're just someone who has a message to share, you have a story to share, yeah, without a doubt, Obviously, Amazon.com has made book publishing a lot easier. And nowadays, there's a lot of folks like myself that are able to help and coach folks to do it. So yeah, I would say, it's definitely gotten to a point. But still, overall, it's still a very small percentage, at least in my world, business owners, corporate leaders who make that effort.
And for those who are considering it, or perhaps maybe they haven't considered it and maybe they should, what are the benefits in your view of producing a book when you're a business owner?
Well, I always like to first shine the light, Thomas, on the intended reader, the targeted reader, right? So I always approach things from a helping before selling mentality. So it's about, okay, we know there is somebody who needs content, information on a specific topic. They're out there. And if this book doesn't get produced, they're not going to be helped by it because it doesn't exist. So I always like to first think, who can we help? Then for the author, the man or woman who's writing the book, it really comes down to a couple big benefits. I mean, right away, even in this day and age, authors are still typically held in higher esteem. For a lot of folks, it definitely distinguishes them. So business owner one, business owner two, business owner one has written a book on, let's say he's a dentist, he's written a book on how to keep your teeth for life. Dentist, number two, has the slick glossy brochure maybe, and they're marketing as such. There's a difference. People are going to look at the author, the gentleman who wrote that book, a bit differently. So that, they, interestingly enough, is a cliche, but the word authority, starts with being an author, right? It starts with the word author, and that's a real value, Thomas. I mean, again, in this day and age, people still are perceived at a different, higher level. And there's a lot of other benefits, Thomas, we could talk about. It becomes a very valuable marketing asset. There's a lot of ways you can leverage it. There's a lot of things you can do, such as podcast guesting. So, I would encourage anybody who thinks they have either a story to share or some very helpful information to think about writing a book.
So in a way, it's a credential,
Mm-hmm.
but it also adds some other, should we say, some more potential of, you said leverage. What are the ways that you can leverage a book?
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about it, right? So we're talking, I'm holding one up, but we're talking real books. So we primarily produce real books. We have digital formats, Kindle versions. So someone sends you a copy of their book, typically it's not getting thrown away. If I send you my brochure, there's a high chance it's ending up in the recycle bin. But books typically don't get thrown away. At minimum, they may get passed to somebody else, a family member, a colleague. Hey, might be of interest to you. So that by their very nature, they are looked upon as something different than other traditional marketing media. So again, just leveraging it as a centerpiece. I call it a book-centric marketing strategy. People put value on books. We're used to, as a culture, wherever you are in the world, to buying books. Now, maybe they're not as expensive as they once were, but you're still used to buying books. You typically don't buy brochures. You typically don't buy YouTube videos that are typical, those kind of marketing. So, that distinction is important. As far as leveraging, Thomas, offline and online. We work with a lot of local business owners, dentists, lawyers, doctors, et cetera, insurance folks. There's some very powerful strategies we can dive into, but just the ability to be able to display a book in your office, give out copies, give out to other business owners in your community so they can give them out to their customers is a smart strategy. Online, obviously, if your book's on Amazon, or if you want to create a book funnel, we could talk about that, but there's a ton of ways, Thomas, that you can leverage either a printed book or a digital book to really, again, help before you sell, get that information out there to the target readers, but then also helping you grow your business.
And the funnel that you touched on, would you like to go into that?
Yeah, I mean, a funnel is just a name for a marketing website and the architecture behind that website, essentially. So it typically starts with a landing page of some sort offering the book. And if you're familiar with these, you've seen them, you get, maybe it's a free book, what they call a free book marketing funnel. So I'm willing to send you my book, just pay for shipping. So someone's getting value right on the front end. And then typically, Thomas, there are a series of upsells and downsells. And the main reason for doing that is to increase the transaction amount. You're not making any money on the shipping, but then to increase the transaction value so that you can cover your marketing costs. So that's really, in a quick nutshell, the value of a book funnel. But it gives consumers an opportunity to say, hey, is that book for me? They can get it for free, just pay shipping typically. And then if they want the other add-ons, if they're behind there, they can go for those. But it's a very specific type of strategy. And then as far as the advertising of it, Facebook, social media, print advertising, we work with a lot of lawyers who are doing, believe it or not, Thomas, a lot of news in this day and age, still doing newspaper advertising. They advertise their book, showing a little picture of it in a newspaper ad, driving newspaper folks to either go online or call the office. And it works very effectively.
Well, you said you had marketing expertise at the beginning. What's your experience there from a, more specific than marketing example?
Yeah, well, thank you. Started out in what I would call corporate marketing 25 years ago. So I worked, again, in a company that was small, got very large, was worldwide. I traveled around the world. Was that the UK? It was in the UK several times. I loved it. Miss it. And that's a certain style of marketing. Tends to be very brand oriented, tends to be a lot of times very fancy and glitzy. About 15, 16 years ago, I transitioned again to helping more local business owners, small or medium. And the style of marketing that I really started applying is something known as direct response marketing. And what that means, it's a bit different, but what it means is everything you do in marketing is tied to driving response, some sort of result that can be measured, which is different than a lot of marketing, right? So it's always about direct response. How does this book drive a response? How does this email drive a response? How does this Facebook ad drive a response? And because it drives a response typically to some sort of online system where you can track it, now you can measure the results of your marketing. And that's the kind of marketing we do. It's the kind of marketing we apply to our book author clients.
I've talked about the branding versus direct response many times, so it's interesting that you bring it up.
Yeah.
And presumably the move to direct response is in relation to the type of client that you work with. So for smaller businesses, they're going to need more of a response from their money. And is that purposeful? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, listen, I don't think a big company, as a matter of fact, I have it right here, a big company here in the States. One of my clients just sent it to me. I can grab it for you. Very slick brochure for their product. Very slick. It's gorgeous. It looks like a coffee table thing, book. A, I can't read it because the font's so small. B, it doesn't drive business. It's like a feel-good piece. It might make, like that kind of marketing, I don't care what budgets you have. It's okay, but if I am a potential customer, I'm not sure how that moves me along to further, becoming a customer. So, yeah, typically, I would say a lot of smarter marketers are using direct response. I'm not saying that brand advertising doesn't have its place. I'm not saying that, but yeah, if you're spending money on marketing, you want to know what the results are.
And your general experience was in branding. What do you think about that?
No, it wasn't. I started off my career in a company where it was definitely more agency style marketing. So again, just slicker type marketing. But then I left that company to start my own company in 1998. And really that's where I started making the transition to studying, because if you really, direct response marketing is something you have to study. You don't go to college for direct response marketing. They surely aren't teaching the fundamental. Maybe the fundamentals in university, but it's something that you have to study the greats from the 20th century who really developed it. The David Ogilvy's, one of your fellow UKers. There's a lot of people who've done some amazing things in the past that I studied.
Well, I had someone come on the podcast and said that branding is coming back into fashion as a result of, let's say, the consumer being more aware of what's happening. So you use the example of the book giveaway, and obviously free book giveaway is brilliant, unless you've seen it like, I don't know, 10 or 15 times with other different things and people become savvy to that, and therefore people are going back into branding. What do you think about that opinion?
Well, I guess it really depends on how you define branding. Okay. In my world, I still think branding is important. So for example, I've run a podcast for the last 2.5 years, and I just went through a lot of consternation about rebranding it. I knew over the last 2.5 years I needed a different, quote, brand. And I pulled the trigger. I kept consternating, should I, shouldn't I? Should I just put it to bed? Anyway, long story short, I decided to rebrand it. So I see the value of that kind of branding. I guess the distinction I would make, brands are important. Again, it's part of being what distinguishes you, your business, whether you're a solopreneur or the head of a $1 billion company. So I'm not saying that. I guess what I would suggest is, relook at your marketing. And this is something that's unique about the book format that we create for our clients. Like, we could talk about sort of the big mistake a lot of nonfiction business authors make. But look at your marketing, and are you giving people who are looking at your marketing, whether it's a television ad, a magazine ad, a social media ad, whatever it might be, are you giving them, those that are interested, because that's who you're meant to be, engaging with in your product or service, are you giving them a way to respond? Are you giving them a way to get more information from you? And if you're not, I think that's a big mistake. So that's what I mean when I say the difference between big corporate marketing versus direct response.
Okay. And the book, I'd be interested to know about how you've marketed your own book. So would you mind sharing about what your own book is and then how you went about promoting it?
Yeah, well, I think we're up to about 15 now that I've published. And I've done
Not bragging.
No, I'm not bragging, actually, because there's a lot of learning lessons there. A lot of things that I think I could have done better. I know I could have done better. All of them are self-published, okay? So I never worked with an agent. I just came up with an idea and said, hey, I want to publish a book. Interestingly enough, Thomas, my first book was in 2007, Labor Day here in the States, which is typically it's in September. So on Labor Day, which is a holiday, I was sitting on the beach, and I had an idea. I said, I need to do a book. And at the time, I was running a local business owner group. People would come once a month. I rented out at the time, I was renting out a hotel room, and I was bringing in business owners, and I was teaching them direct response marketing, like how to, so I had to, they were members, they were paying to come to these meetings. And I knew at the time, I said, I bet if I have a book about, and I'm in Philadelphia, so I'm in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area. I knew if I had a book about successful Philadelphia entrepreneurs, that could help me. So on Labor Day 2007, I came up with this idea. I'm going to put a book together. By December, just 3 months later, I had a book with 32, myself being the 32nd, so 31 other successful entrepreneurs in Philadelphia. And it's actually behind me, but regardless, I didn't write it per se. I came up with this idea, and we interviewed each one and each entrepreneur, and they essentially wrote a chapter in the book. And that book, Thomas, I was on TV because of it. I started marketing it, getting it out there. And because there was 31 other sub-authors or co-authors, they were all marketing it. So I had this exponential effect, which was very cool. I was on TV, I was on radio, Investors Business Daily, which is a big newspaper. I was interviewed for that. My point is, that's sort of one of the benefits if you do some things. Now, as far as the level of marketing I did for that book, in hindsight, I didn't do that much. I should have done a lot more. My next several books, I sort of just put up on Amazon and did the publish and pray method. Oh, I published it. Now I pray someone's going to find it, which doesn't work typically. Name a few. And then the last couple, since then, my email list is much bigger. I have joint venture partners, meaning I get people to promote it for me, share it, because I'm writing about business books, so they're willing to do that. And now we also leverage Amazon advertising, so we're paying for ads on Amazon. And I'm never worried about book sales, that number per se. I'm not worried about making money selling my books. I'm trying to get them out there as much as possible because my books will ultimately, a small percentage they become clients, and that's what I'm trying to do.
So a little challenge for you. You ready?
Yes.
Can you name your 15 books?
I could. Well, there'd be a lot of behind me. You really want me to? The first one The first one was called Dream Inc. INC for Dream Incorporated. It was about 32 stories of how I became an entrepreneur, why I started a business. My most recent one is the 100-page book. They're the two bookends.
Well, based on your reaction, I think you could have, that was hardly a challenge. I said it was a challenge, but it did look like a challenge.
No, hey, listen, I'm in my 50s. It could be a challenge.
So, what's your favorite book
that I wrote, or that I've read?
That you wrote yourself.
I would say either. Gosh, there's a couple that I really think have made a huge impact, and you can see the impact if you go to Amazon and read the reviews. So the 100-page book is the most recent. There's over 200 reviews. Most of them are good. And I love that. Like, it's really cool to see. I have invited people on my podcast because they left a review and I was able to track them down. I hired one woman left a very nice review. She's a copywriter. She now works with us on our team because she's like, and I just said, it was a neat review. We got on a Zoom call. We liked each other. So I would say the 100-page book the 100-page book and the magic of short books, which precedes it, have had the biggest impact. They've helped. We've sold thousands and thousands of copies. I only say that because it's helped a lot of people. They've helped a lot of people.
Congratulations. I think you'd be in the vast minority of people in terms of that number of sales. So
absolutely.
What's the book about? The 100-page book?
Yeah, so the kind of book that we produce for our clients are books that are designed to be read in about an hour, like a 1-hour personal conversation. So this podcast is a conversation with you and me. Imagine a book format of this. So it's not meant, these aren't these short, helpful books. We call them Shooks. That's the name I came up with. That's my brand, Shooks, short, helpful books. My special sauce, if you will. And again, meant to be read in about an hour. And they're very focused. They're not meant to be the A to Z encyclopedia. They're not meant to be a textbook. They're about 100 pages, hence the 100-page book. And they are direct response books, Thomas. Every shook that we create for myself or a client is about helping before selling, but also, if you're interested in what I shared in this book, here's the next step. Go do this. And we give 2 different pathways in each shook for readers. So it's very well thought out. But yeah, the 100-page book and the magic of short books are, matter of fact, at the end of this conversation, I'm going to give away for your listeners, they can actually read the 100-page book for free.
Well, tell me, what's it about?
So it's about our format, the Business Owner's Guide to Self-Publishing a Short Customer Attraction Book. So the idea behind it is, a lot of people think they want to write a book. Most people will say, I don't know how to, I don't have the time to. And those are very real realities. Writing, I just interviewed a gentleman for my podcast, interestingly enough, from Tasmania, our first Tasmanian podcast guest. It took him 7 years to write his book, one book. And I get that. He consternated, he wasn't sure, blah, blah, blah. And it's a 300-page book. It's and then listen, I should talk about that too, but a lot of readers these days like and appreciate short, bite-sized information. I love reading. I've been a voracious reader since I was a young kid. I don't know how many books I've started and stopped because I just can't get through them. And that's not what a shook is about. A shook is about, hey, sit down, an hour later, you're done. But anyway, this thought of really just trying to make it easier for people to write that book. You have a message to share. You have a story to share. You help people. Don't worry about writing a 300-page book that might be 100,000 words. Our books are anywhere from 10 to 15,000 words, so a lot less. Our typical author takes about 8 to 12 weeks, so it's measured in months, or actually it's measured in weeks, not years. So that's what the 100-page book's all about. It's about showing, and I give people the literal formula, the little recipe we use here to go write their own shook.
You got a favorite chapter?
Let's see here. That I have to look up. Oh, I do actually. Well, there's a couple, but I am a marketing geek, and I actually go back in there and talk about the history of book-centric marketing. Let me show you here. Actually, you know what? It's not in the 100 pages. It's in the Magic of Short Books. I don't know if you know this, but this is kind of cool. And again, if you're a marketing geek, this is cool. The use of a book, and specifically a free book. So I wrote another book called The Magic of Free Books, and it's about giving away as many books as you can. Well, the use of a free book, Thomas, goes back into the 1800s. I have ads that I have found, interestingly enough, for a mattress company here in the United States, a mattress company that offered a free book as a way for consumers to learn about the unique aspects of their mattresses. That's pretty cool. So this is not something that I came up with. Book funnels aren't something I came up with. There's no one alive today that can say they came up with a book funnel. It's been around for over 100 years. So there's a chapter, it's in the Magic of Short Books, which is the red one behind me, where I actually go into the history of book-centric marketing, which I think is kind of cool.
Well, I think it's Claude Hopkins is a person that's spoken about in direct response. Is that, are you aware of Claude?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. Yep.
So you said you're a marketing geek. What would you say are the main misconceptions about marketing and the best lesson that you can give?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. How much time do you have? That's a good one. The biggest misconception is I'm not a marketer. Just like a lot of people say, I'm not a salesperson. Well, if you're a business owner, you're a salesperson, ultimately. Well, if you're a business owner, now maybe if you're in corporate, you might not be a marketer per se, but if you run a business, in charge of a business, own a business, you are a marketer. And you may never have thought of yourself that way. You may say, let's go back to, my dentist, for example, my dentist example. He went to school for years. He comes out of school. Now, I don't know if they're doing that this much these days because they're probably getting a little more savvy, but he comes out of school and he's like, okay, I'm a dentist. I'm going to open a dentist office up. And that's what I'm worried about. Like, I want to get patients. The mindset that I've always tried to educate. So back when I used to run that group, and I ran it for a number of years, that local group, and I would get dentist and doctor, everyone you can imagine, local business owners and online business owners. But I would always try to get them to understand they are in the marketing business. You're not a dentist. Don't think of yourself as a dentist per se. Think of yourself as the marketer of a dental practice. And that is a mind shift. That means you're thinking marketing first. That's why direct response is so powerful. You're thinking about response first. So it's not just, whatever you create, whatever message you put out, whatever products or services you put together, you look at it from a marketer's angle. Is this what people want? Yes or no? Not because I want it. Is this what my potential patients want or consumers want? And then how do they want it? What should it look like? What should it include? What should the price be? So I think when you look at things from a marketing viewpoint, it changes. And over the years, I've worked with a ton of people and gotten them to sort of see the light, if you will.
Well, yeah. The one I like is if you're trying to be as helpful as possible, meaning you're trying to help that other person out as much as you possibly can, give them as much information and make the purchase as should we say, valuable as possible to them. You end up with a bunch of stuff that looks like a direct response template, if you will, because that's already been thought out, and you don't necessarily have to have a marketing education to think that way. So as you said, everyone can be a marketer, providing you think about the fact that what's the most beneficial thing I can do for the person who's potentially going to be my customer.
Yeah, I maybe it isn't a 100-page book. So now you catch me. Like this is 2 years old, but I think I wrote it. I think it's in this one.
Did I just pull something out of your book there?
Yeah. Well, no, I call it you'll like this. I think I think it's in there. If not, it's in the other one. But I call it the Nanna strategy. Nanna. So my mom's mother was my Nana. And she was the one that got me hooked on books when I was a little kid. I had to go travel 2 hours to her house. She had a big library. She would always buy me books. And she was the one that instilled this love of reading. She was also her husband, my grandfather, was a local pharmacist. He had a local pharmacy, which was his dad's and then his. She worked in the pharmacy. So they were local business owners plus this love of books. And I came up with this strategy to pay homage to her. And I loved her dearly. And I called it my Nanna strategy because I would want other business owners, now she's no longer with us, but I would want business owners to treat her with the utmost respect. So if she was going to buy a car, or if she was going to go buy furniture, whatever, my hope would be she would be treated with respect. People would want to help before selling. They would just, the way we all want to be treated, right? So I call it the Nanna strategy. I wrote about it in one of my books, and I just thought, it's exactly what you just said, right? You want to treat people. I want other business owners to treat people like they would treat my grandmother. So yes, I just had to share that.
I love the Nanna strategy. I think I've referred to it as like the family friend. So if your Nanna strategy, I think is brilliant. Coming back to your book for a second and your marketing expertise, if there was one thing that, because you listed a whole bunch of things that people can do to sell their book, and what I find with most people is that if you give them like 5 or 6 strategies to sell their book, most likely they won't do any. So of all the things that you would recommend as a marketing medium for selling a book, what would you recommend?
Well, again, remember, for most of our clients, if not all of them, I don't want them to sell their book. Okay, so this is again not, yes, if it's up on Amazon, but you can put a free book on Amazon too. So I'm not worried about selling a book. There are reasons why people write a book to earn a couple dollars selling it. That's not who our clients are. So I'll just rephrase it a little bit. So let's just say, how do we get the book out there as much as possible? Selling it or giving it away. And it really is different, Thomas, whether they're an online primarily business owner or if they're a bricks and mortar business owner, a local business owner, So one of the smartest things, let's start with the local business owner first. Let's go back to my dentist friend. One of the smartest things, and I've actually had clients do this very effectively, in the dental space, believe it or not, is he writes the book and then he gives out copies. So I don't know how many people will see the actual video here, but I'm a big fan of displaying books. I always encourage my clients to display their books in their office, in their place of business, but also find other businesses in your community. So for our dentist friend, I'll give you an example. One dentist, unfortunately, who's a client for years, became a shook author, and then unfortunately passed away not too long ago, unexpectedly. He wrote a book about a very unique book because his approach to dentistry was very holistic, very. He did not use mercury. I won't go into the details, but a lot of dentists use mercury, which is dangerous. His whole approach was you don't use mercury, and if you have mercury, which are the silver fillings in your teeth, you got to get them taken out. They're bad for you. That's a very unique type of dentistry. So we encouraged him to find other businesses in his area that you would find an audience that was very concerned about their health. Because that's the kind of person who's going to spend the money to take amalgams out, they're worried about their health. So he put his book, he went out to his community, He found yoga studios, natural food stores, certain types of physicians and chiropractors. So anyone where had an audience that was health oriented, and he displayed his book, much like you can see behind me, with a little note, free book, take a copy, blah, blah, blah. I remember him telling me this, it's a couple years now. Within the first 30 days of doing that, Thomas, he got 3 new patients that were worth several $1,000s each to him, ultimately. And he was beside himself because he would not have gotten those patients if they hadn't seen his shook in the natural food store or the chiropractor's office. So for the local business owner, giving your books out to other businesses that align with you, that have your audience in their place of business, is very smart. A very smart strategy. Online, book funnels, very smart. Email marketing, joint ventures, letting people who might have an audience that's similar to your intended audience know about the book. Giving out special bonuses. Podcast guesting is a very smart strategy for book authors. So yeah, there's the magic of free books. I list 50. I know you're right. You give too many options. I list 51 ways to leverage a free book, either offline or online.
No, I think it sounds very valuable. And if someone's serious, they'll do it, right? So, Mike, what are your goals?
What are my goals? Which one? Personal, professional?
It's open to whatever you want to lead with.
Gosh, there's so many. But I think I just believe. I interviewed a gentleman, Thomas, on my podcast. So on my podcast, I only interview nonfiction business authors who are using a book in their business or whatever. So it's the kind of people we serve. I just interviewed a gentleman. Matter of fact, his episode went live this week on our podcast. And it was the coolest story because it's going to answer your question. He wrote a book years ago on change, how to change yourself, how to incorporate change in your life. But it went beyond that. And this is the big benefit of book writing and book publishing. Unbeknownst to him, and he didn't intend this initially, his book became a useful device, a useful tool in prisons. So think about it. Prisoners who are trying to be redeemed, who are trying to enter society again. A book about change and how to change yourself. I get chills talking about it because he said, and you can hear him talk about this, he's like, I never thought about that, but it happened. And now his book is now used as a part of like a curriculum for prisoners in the United States. Had he never written that book, he would never have been able to help those people. So my goal is, to answer your question, my goal would be for anyone listening to this who said, you know what, I've always wanted to write a book, because a lot of people say that. Or you know what, I never thought about writing a book, but maybe I should. I have a story to share. I help people a specific way. Just do it. It sounds like a cliche, but just do it. Read the 100-page book. You could see the kind of book I would encourage you to write. But just do it, because again, Thomas, if it doesn't get written, if it doesn't get out there, it's not going to help people.
You never really know how that experience will benefit you as well, right? So,
well, you mean me, the author, or the person, the potential readers?
Well, if you write a book, if you do just do it, then you'll be better for it. That's for sure. Providing you don't blow a load of advertising budget or something. But if you go to do your next book, whatever that might be, you will create a significantly better book by doing the first one.
Yeah.
Just through having the experience, right?
Yes. I will also encourage anyone listening. I mean, I could give you all the little sound bites I use, but you're absolutely right about that. Absolutely right about that. So yeah, if you don't get that first one done, I always say, Thomas, there's no such thing as the perfect book. So don't let anyone ever tell you there's no way. You'll always want to change something or find something. Just live with it. The other thing I think is more important is I say strive for personality, not for perfection. Again, so many people get stuck never writing a book because they think it has to be perfect. They think they have to be the next Hemingway. They think they have to write perfectly. That's not what we're talking about here. Okay, we're talking about a conversation that's in a book format. So strive for personality. People want to, understand, your readers want to get to know, like, and trust you. They want to, learn more about you. Strive for bringing that personality. So if you read any of my shooks, my personality comes through. So strive for personality, not perfection.
Is there anything that I should have asked you about today?
The only other thing that no, very great interview. The only thing that maybe of just deeper thought is, because I asked this on my podcast, like, why a book? Like, aren't people choosing, tweets and short video? Like, who reads? And I would say, to that question, who reads? There's a lot of people that still read. And they do appreciate books. And the demographic of book readers, depending on your target market and your business. But there is most book readers, they're seeking out information. They tend to be more educated. They tend to be more selective in how they buy. They tend to be appreciative of helpful information. They tend to be focused on research. So that kind of person, oftentimes, Thomas, makes for a better type of customer or client. They're informed, they're educated. So I would say, maybe the only question would be, like, are books really still a media that's important today? And the answer is yes, in my opinion.
I certainly agree with that. But you did raise the question for me in terms of, how many decades are left for books? Because what I was going to say was, maybe a lot of the younger demographic may not be doing that. Have you got any thoughts there?
Well, my daughter, I have two daughters. My daughter, in her senior year of high school, going into her senior year, published a book. I encouraged her to publish a book. It was about dog rescues, so rescuing dogs. She raised $6,000 to give away. We gave away all that money to dog rescues. She was in all over the local newspaper, local magazines. She didn't even try. We just, we put one press release out. When it came time to apply for colleges, she got into every college, got all these scholarship offers. Interesting enough, the college she chose didn't offer anything. But, again, if a 18-year-old can do it, anybody can do it. But, to your point of the younger generation, no. I mean, listen, people have been hypothesizing and philosophizing about that for decades. It's never going to end. I think the written word will always be a powerful medium. And, I don't think books are going anyway. Maybe there's the way hope. They consume them, there's hope.
Sometimes
they've been around for thousands of years.
Yeah, sometimes I ask about closing thoughts, but I think there's hope is probably a good closing thought. So for people who want to know more, where do they find you?
Well, a couple places. First of all, if it's okay with you, I'd like to give your listeners a gift. Actually, two gifts.
You go for it.
So the 100-page book, they can read it online for free. So you can see one of those digital formats. And then, and I would encourage anyone to read it. Who's thinking about, a nonfiction book. And then I also have a second book I'm going to give you, which is I call it the Quick Start. It just distills down the recipe we use for our shooks in a very small book. So if you go to my main website is MikeCapuzzi.com. There's a hidden page there. That hidden page is MikeCapuzzi.com. So MikeCap as in Peter, UZZI.com /gifts, GIFTS. If you go there, Thomas, or your listeners go there, you can get the 100-page book and the Quick Start Guide for free. So MikeCapuzzi.com, and then Bite-Sized Books is our publishing company. And then my podcast, the new rebrand, you're one of the first to hear about it, is called The Author Factor, and it's at authorfactor.com.
Well, congrats on the rebrand. I will check it out. And thank you for the gifts and the offer. And thank you for your contribution of 15 books out in the world, and also for being a great guest. So, Mike, thank you very much.
Thomas, thank you.